Great. All right, everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. Colin is going to talk to us about using drones for dive travel, which apparently is hard for me to say. And I am excited about this because I only take pictures kind of under or on the water and never over. But I've seen amazing imagery from up in the sky of these cool places that we all go. And so I'm looking forward to hearing about how. And with that, Colin, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. You know, the session tonight, I designed it to cover the use of drones for dive travel, but I want to kind of cover everything before you would even do that, and that is go through some of the basics of purchasing criteria, basic operations, how to operate over the water. So whether you're new to drones or you're an experienced pilot or you're somebody that's just starting out, I tried to make this as broad and as applicable as possible, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. These are the topics that I've got set up for tonight. It's I want to go over taxonomy and talk about, there's a lot to learn about drones, and they're flying machines, but there's lots of things associated with them. There's a lot of technology associated with them, so I want to go through that. I talk about the legal requirements of flying in the United States and then outside. Give you a little hint on some purchasing criteria for what you would look for if you were purchasing a drone. Talk about basic operations, some do's and don'ts, and then start to get really specific. Talk about operating over water, launching a drone from a boat, and then how to film dive operations. And then I've got a little tutorial on how to do some cinematic moves, how to get those amazing shots. And then lastly, I want to cover, what do you need to know about traveling with drones? How do you pack from them? So if that sounds good, let's go ahead. Let's just get started. There's probably lots of reasons why people want to fly drones, but I kind of put them into three categories. One, it's, for most people, you want to create this lasting memory. You're going to an exotic location, but you say to yourself, what if I could see this, from a perspective of, from a bird's eye view, and take a chance to take a picture or record a video of the landscape and shoot a 360-degree image of that, and kind of keep that as a memory for years and share that with friends. The other thing about drones is it's a great opportunity to learn a new skill. So camera technology, as it's evolving, and there's a better opportunity for better imaging. That's constantly evolving. So having the skills comes with flying drones. You really need those skills and know, the difference between making a really boring image and a really exciting image. And that relates, of course, to your experience already that at diving, so and doing dive photography. So it's a nice fit. And of course, it's fun. That's kind of the third thing, is that, flying drones is just fun. But make no mistake, it takes quite a few hours to really become a master and get the skills you need to fly a drone to a level to where you feel comfortable in flying in different scenarios, and then be able to get out onto the water. So that's what I want to kind of do in this, is walk you through this. Of course, I'm an addict. But for anybody new, you really need to be careful, take your time learning. And many people do like I did when I first got into drones. You kind of speed up through the process. Oh, I can fly this thing. And I took off and crashed and took off and crashed and fixed a lot of drones. But after a while, you get the skills and, you learn, and there's a lot of tribal knowledge out there on YouTube and a lot of places where you can go to learn how to fly drones. But once you do and you get the skill, it's amazing what you can do. So what I want to do is start off with just a little teaser, and it's a video that I did when I went to Atmosphere Resort in Darwin in the Philippines. And I call it One Atmosphere was the name of the video. So let me see if I can share that. Give me 1 second to stop sharing and then share that video. Give me a second here. Okay, let's see.
Looks like Ruth has a question. She's got her hand up.
Oh, okay. I can't see the hands. Go ahead.
Quickie question. Besides, I used to live in the Philippines, by the way, but I want to ask you, how much do drones cost?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I'll cover that. Let me
Okay.
go through that one section.
I will
I've got a
shut
whole
up
section
then.
on that. When I talk about the purchasing criteria, kind of give you an idea, because it's a broad range. They can cost anywhere from, $50 to $5,000 to $50,000, depending upon what you want. But there's a good reasonable range, and I'll walk you through that. So let me share this video here real quick. Let me start it. There we go. So tell me if you can see this. Top 5 cinematic.
We see the film strip, not the thing yet, not the
Okay.
video.
All right. How about now?
Nope.
All right. Let me see if I can get it. I've paused it. Stop sharing. Let me see. Let me try it again.
And you probably know this, but there's an option to optimize the screen share for
Yep.
video that'll make it a lot smoother if you click that.
Got it. Okay.
Awesome.
There you go.
Now, how about now?
Yes.
Okay, great. But that's the wrong video. Give me a second. I'll try it again. I bring up the video that I wanted to share, which is this one here. Okay. And I'm going to share screen. This one. There we go. Nice. See a bunch of boats on the water. Is that full screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Again, this was a quick, it's just a quick video to kind of give you a teaser of what it's like. I make lots of moves in this video, and I'm going to cover them when we get to that section. So just kind of pay attention. The thing that's tricky about this video is that it's highly edited, and I really only make a few moves. But the secret of the sauce is to edit them together so it tells a story. So here you go. Okay. Well, there you go. That's the teaser video. Let's move forward, and let me go on to share my screen. I'm going to share this right here. And tell me when you see it.
I see it.
Can you see it full screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so like I said, the topics there, I'm going to go through these and I'll try to cover as much territory as I can, and hopefully answer any questions that you've got there at the end. So I don't want to take up all your time and your whole evening, but I can talk forever on drones. But really, let's start off with some of the basics. What's a drone? A drone is an unmanned aircraft, and this is so important, which people don't understand. it's an aircraft. And flying a drone is about being in aviations. Drones are legally an aircraft. And essentially, though, take that away, it's a flying robot, and you can remotely control and fly autonomously using software. You can fly in flight patterns. It's got embedded systems that work in conjunction with onboard sensors and a global positioning system. Now, there's a broad spectrum, like I said, of drones, and everywhere from the hobby to professional to military. We're going to focus on that left side there, which is the hobby and the semi-quote professional or prosumer type drones is really where the area I'm going to be focused on. It's the area I was focused on as an analyst. I didn't cover military drones. I wasn't interested in that. I was covering more about the professional and industry and how there was a merger between professional and industrial drones and the hobby drones, which started out basically as DIY. They were do-it-yourself, and it really didn't come to fruition. Drones really didn't come into the forefront of consumers and camera operators and photographers and videographers until around 2013, where we first saw the first turnkey camera drones from DJI. It was a quadcopter with a GoPro camera on it. And it progressed. That company is a Chinese company. They dominate the market. They hold about a 75% market share. And in 2016, probably the most popular drone that came out was called the DJI Mavic, and there's all kinds of offshoots of the Mavic, and all the other manufacturers copied it. But that's basically where we are now, is that we have foldable prosumer camera drones with really good cameras on them that take incredible video, take good 20 megapixel, 24, 48 megapixel still shots on them, take 4K video. Some of them take 8K video. Every year they come out with something new, and it's a technology that's continuously evolving. But let me go back here and let's talk about some of the basics of what's in a drone. And I tried to find an image that hopefully people could relate to, and just pointed out to the basics. But the flying camera has 4 propellers on it, or rotors. It has connectivity with the ground. It has a camera. It has a landing gear. Inside, there are things that make it work called accelerometers and altimeters. So the drone has to know how high it is, and it has to know how fast forward it's going. Accelerometers and altimeters are embedded in so many pieces of electronics. They're in a lot of phones. Your phone has an accelerometer on it. Your phone has a GPS on it. So does a drone. So the miniaturization of the technology of GPS and accelerometers and altimeters is a thing that's made drones become smaller, portable, more reliable. But those are the basics, and those are the basic things you need to know. There's motors, rotors, connectivity, an accelerometer, there's a landing gear, and there's a camera. And there's also a little thing that stabilizes the camera that's not shown in this slide. It's called a gimbal, and I'll cover that in a minute. Newer drones have other pieces to them. This is an example of a DJI Mavic. It has sensors around it so that it knows whether or not it's going to crash into something. Those sensors are basically either ultrasonic devices or infrared devices, or they are cameras. These 2 things on the front there, there's 2 on the back, those are cameras. There's a camera on the bottom. And those cameras tell the drone, work with the AI inside the processor and tell it how far away it is from an object, whether it's going to run into an object, whether given the certain speed, whether it's going to hit it or not, how far away are you from the ground? Is this a good, safe landing location? The sensors keep getting better and better on the drones, and that's now an integral part of what's in a drone. The other part of a drone that is part of what you use is the controller. You control it from the ground. This looks like a complex picture, but it's really kind of simple if you just look at the 2 things. And that is these left and right control sticks. That's the things you use to control the drone's movement. So you tell the drone to go forward, to go backwards, you tell it to slide right, you tell it to slide left, you tell it to go up, you tell it to go down, or you tell it to circle, or what's called a yaw. And then the rest of it is all the connectivity that's in this controller and the drone. There's an antenna here because you got to communicate with it back and forth. And you also have this thing that's called the gimbal dial. I'll talk about that in a minute. That's the thing that controls where the camera points, up or down. So you can point the camera in 360 degrees wherever you want it to go. You have a lot of control. For a lot of people, it's a little overwhelming when you first do it. But you'll find that as you fly more and more, you get a little more used to the controls, and it becomes easier and easier. And the controllers are getting better and better because they are very ergonomic. The other thing that's in an integral part of the drone is the app. The app either sits on your phone or it sits on the controller itself, and it really does four things. It tells you the aircraft status. It tells you how high it is. Do I have good connectivity? How much battery is left? Do I have a good satellite connection? How far away am I from you? Lots of things in this app. The other thing is the picture in here. And the picture is what we call a first-person view. That's what you're seeing. So you see right through the camera, just like you would from the back of your camera on screens affixed to your DSLR or your mirrorless camera. It's just there, except now the camera's up in the sky and your screen is on your phone and you're on the ground. And that's a really cool thing because you get to see what's going on with the drone and what you can see what it sees. So it makes filming really great because you know exactly what you're going to get. The other thing that the app will tell you is the camera settings. There's lots of controls there. I'll talk more about that later. And then there's flight controls. Some of those flight controls exist in the app itself because you can program it to do certain things. You can program it to track an object. You can program it to circle you, to follow you, to go to certain waypoints. In other words, I can tell it to move ahead and then move to the left and then move to the right. So I have a lot of control with the drone and that's mainly comes from the app itself. The screens are attached to the controller, and it's either your phone or a dedicated screen. So the one on the left there you can see is just a regular Android or iOS phone. And then the controller is underneath of it. And you can see this controller is a lot more simpler. The controllers are getting simpler because they're putting more and more of the features into the app itself. I'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages of these two things. But essentially, it works in conjunction with your phone. So some of the information that the drone gets, it's actually getting from your phone. And that's a great thing because you can, whatever footage you take, you can download it directly to your phone, take it with you and go and edit it, or show it to your friends. Okay, so that's the basics of kind of the taxonomy of drones. Let's talk about now the legal part of what you really need to know, because as I mentioned, drones are aircraft. And so there's a legal side to it. In the United States, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, regulates drones. And they've been doing so for quite a while, ever since there was a court case that determined that drones are aircraft and can, in fact, be regulated by the federal government, by the FAA, by the DOT. The FAA reports to the DOT. Just some of the basic drone laws. If your drone weighs more than 250 grams, you have to register it with the FAA. Easy, simple process. You just go in, you give it the manufacturer name, your name, and some basic information, the serial number of the drone, the brand and the model name, and then it gives you a registration just like a license plate, and that gets affixed to your drone, and your aircraft is now registered. It costs $5. Not a big deal. Recently, the FAA wanted to make sure that anybody who flies a drone anybody, that's everybody, that's you and me, goes through a test. And so they came up with this thing called TRUST, which is the recreational UAS safety test. UAS stands for Unmanned Aircraft System. The recreational is the way in which the FAA delineates between commercial and recreational. We're on the recreational side unless you're commercial, and commercial means that you are taking money from somebody to fly a drone, to take a picture. So that drone shot that somebody's going to get of their house, if they're going to sell it, you pay somebody. That somebody you paid has to be a certified commercial Part 107 UAS remote pilot. And you go through an extensive test, and it's not easy. It's pretty complex. Probably more complex than it needs to be, but that's neither here nor there. No matter who you are, you have to keep the drone within line of sight. You have to keep it under 400 feet AGL, which means 400 feet above ground level. You can only fly in what's called Class G airspace. I'm not going to explain to you all the different airspaces in this state. That's, you can look that up, but just look up class of airspace, and you'll see all the different airspaces. And just to kind of give you a quick understanding, Class G is kind of open, and it's not it isn't under the control of a tower, right? A tower at an airport. The airspace next to a tower or next to a runway is considered either Class B or Class C airspace, and they're all different classifications. It can be quite confusing to know. It is one of the things you have to know if you want to do commercial work. But suffice it to say, if you go out in an open field, chances are you're probably in Class G airspace. So the FAA says, okay, no problem. You can fly in Class G airspace. However, there are zones where you can't fly, and they don't want you to fly. And some register those places, like you can't go in the United States, in most of the parks, national parks, and even state parks, you can't fly your drone. It's considered a no-fly zone. They don't want people buzzing around and scaring animals, and so they have restrictions on where you can fly. I'll talk more about that later. Part 107 is the commercial. Now, the new thing that's kind of the new fly in the ointment is this thing called remote ID. This is just started now as of September. So if you fly a drone that weighs less than 250 grams, you don't have to worry about it. And you're just doing it for recreational purposes, no problem. You don't need a remote ID. However, most drones weigh more than 250 grams, and they're going to have embedded into their systems some way for the identification of the altitude, the registration. It's kind of like a license plate. It allows local law enforcement to query your drone if you're flying over a hospital, let's say, or you're hassling somebody. Local law enforcement at some point will get the ability to query that and know who the operator is, or at least know who the person who is flying it, and possibly even where they are located. Kind of fuzzy at this point as to what that will be, but just know that those are the drone laws for the United States. That's it in the basic. There's lots of information out there on US drone laws. The FAA has a good website. They keep their website up to date. There's also plenty of people on YouTube, plenty of people who have websites. You just do a Google search on US drone laws, and you'll see, 5,000 or more people who specialize in that have a website that'll give you any information that you want to know about it. Outside the US, it's a different story. Different countries have different laws. This little map there that I've got there on the right kind of is colored and gives you an idea of where most countries are, like, for example, in Europe, in Canada, and Australia, and other places. They have the basic rules that we have, which is you can't fly above 400 feet, you got to keep it within line of sight. There's a commercial use restriction. In Europe, there's more privacy laws, so there's a lot more stricter ability to use a drone in fewer places. Some countries have big no-fly zones. Some have very small. Excuse me. Some have big, complete outright bans. So there are websites, and I've got a resource here. I've got in this presentation. I'm going to make it available to you via PDF. I'll have a link in there where you can go to find out where you can fly and where you can't fly. The other thing about the legal part of it is insurance. It's not a legal requirement in the US. It is in other countries. You have to know before you fly. You've got to figure out where you're going to fly and whether or not you need insurance. In general, I carry insurance, but it matters because it matters to how frequently you're flying. And most of it is for liability reasons. Let's say your drone falls out of the sky. It wasn't your fault. But it hits your neighbor's BMW and smashes their windshield. You're responsible, and if you have insurance, you're covered. Or your drone flies away or flies into the ocean or into the lake. You need some kind of hull insurance to be able to, just like you do with a boat. They call it hull insurance. You can be covered with that too, so you can get a replacement cost for that. Kind of the way it breaks down is that if you're flying daily or weekly, you want some kind of comprehensive insurance. If you're flying just quarterly or annually, there's this thing called on-demand insurance, which is really great. You only get it for the time that you're actually flying, and you have to look very specifically though if it covers you're covered if you go out of the country. That matters. But most drones are, easy to use, and so the insurance company has adopted this on-demand insurance coverage, and it's fairly cheap. Again, I said I'll make this available to you. I've got a list here of the country laws. I've got a list of the no-fly zones here. This is where you would go. You can just Google that. You can just Google DJI no-fly zones, and you'll get this to come up. And then there's drone ID, aircraft compliance. That's changing. The Drone Girl is a good resource. She keeps up to date with the compliance of the different manufacturers, whether or not they're complying with the drone ID law. Okay, so that's the legal side of it. So now let's talk about buying drones. And I can come back to this. We can look at this no-fly zone here if we've got time at the end. I'll bring up that map and we can look at one. Let's say you're going to go fly in the Philippines, or you're going to go fly, I don't know, Rajampat, I don't know, some place. We can look it up on the map and see where can I fly. And what restrictions there are in the country code, what kind of country restrictions there are too. All right, purchasing criteria. You asked the question earlier: is our drones? What's it cost? Like I said, drones can be cheap. You'll get what you pay for. But here's what I tell people. The $1,000 price point seems to be the price point just under maybe $800 to $1,500. That range is a range that gets you a really good drone. I mean, a really good one. One that will be dependable, one that'll perform, be easy to use, be portable, have good camera specs. and will kind of help, will support whatever your post-production workflow is. So these are the major factors, performance. How far does it fly? What kind of wind resistance does it have? Does it have obstacle avoidance? How easy to use is it? Is it easy to control? Does it hover well? What's the app like? Is the app easy to understand? Does the app have good camera control integration? Is it portable? Can I store it? Is it travel? How travelable is it? Then the camera specs. What's the size of the sensor? What's the frame rate that I can film at? Can I shoot 4K at 120 frames per second? Well, maybe not for $1,500. Maybe a little bit more you can, but most of them do 60. And then, what's the quality of that video, or what's the quality of the pictures that you're getting? And then what's your post-production workflow? What editing are you using? Do you want to shoot RAW and JPEG? Do you want to shoot both? Almost all the really good drones support both RAW, both support some kind of a RAW video format also. You'll need a LUT or something like that to bring it back to Rec 409, but most of them have some kind of RAW image capability. And then, of course, it all comes down to your budget. And again, you'll get what you pay for, but you can't skimp on these things. If you really want to fly a drone, fly it safely, be comfortable with it, and have a platform that you're not going to outgrow. As I said, weight matters because that under that 250 gram mark, you're down here with drones like the DJI Mini and Mini Pro and Mini 3. They're all 249 grams, so they skirt the legal issue. However, they aren't going to perform as well in high wind. So those are the factors you need to know. So if you want just a recreational drone and you don't want to have to go through the hassle of all the other stuff, well, you can do it. Is it good for dive travel, and can you fly it off a boat? You could. You could also lose it. So you get it above that, and you get the little better performing. Obviously the bigger the bigger the airframe, the better the wind resistance, the better performance, the bigger the blades are, the better the camera is. That's kind of just what the trade-off is there with weight. I've got 3 slides in here, and I'm just going to show you these slides. I'm not going to read them. We're not going to go through them, but I've got them in here for you to review later on. And these are, when you're picking an aircraft and you're picking the drone that you want to use, these are the types of things that you want to look at, the maximum flight time, things like the battery capacity. Does it have a smart battery? Smart batteries are very important for lithium polymer, because unlike your camera, in some ways like your camera, but not completely. LiPo is a different animal. You can't leave it charged up. You have to unload it and keep it stored at half power. Well, some of the smarter batteries do that automatically. You can charge it up and, oh, well, I didn't use it. What do I do? I got to discharge the battery somehow. Well, back in the day, when I was first learning, we had to discharge our batteries. The less smart LiPos came along as a lifesaver, just huge time saver, where you didn't have to dump the power out of your battery. There's other things that you look for. You look for hover accuracy, like I said. You look for, how many of these, GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, how many of those global navigation systems, satellite systems, does your drone capture? The more it captures, the more accurate it's going to be. Transmission frequency and power. Is your transmission Wi-Fi? Or is it a single band? Or is it a multi-band? Does it frequency hop? These are the types of things, because it matters when you're now looking at your live view and the camera and the quality and the latency of what you're seeing on the screen and what the drone is actually doing. Back in the day, there was a lot of latency, so you could be crashing into something, but you wouldn't know it because you didn't see it on your screen until it was too late. But now the latency is great and the quality is great. Like I said, there's lots of things to look at. You also want to look at your camera sensor. I'm going to skip this one because you already do this. You're already filming. You already understand the things that you need to look at for your land camera. So the same kind of things apply when you're looking at drone cameras. And then the other thing that you really want to look at are the specs of the gimbal. The gimbal, I said, is that thing that stabilizes the camera, really keeps it level to the horizon, keeps it level, and makes sure that it swivels. So as the drone banks left or banks right, the horizon doesn't bank left and bank right. The horizon stays level. Or as you go up or down, there's lots of stabilization. There's differences in the mechanical range and the control of the range and those type of things. But those are the specs. Those are the things you want to look for. Then there's also this, which is the accessories that go with your drone. As you like to say, the aftermarket. You know, you're not just buying a drone, you're buying all the accessories that go with it. You're going to need an SD card. You may want an extra one, an extra battery. You may need a screen hood. You may need a case for traveling in. And you may or may not want the goggles that allow you to fly what's called FPV, which means you don't have your eyes on your drone. You're looking through the goggles and you're seeing it's like an immersive experience. I don't recommend that for flying. If you're flying over the water, don't recommend it at all. Just because you can quickly lose sight of your drone, and unless you've got a really good experienced spotter, you're bound to crash, and it's disorienting. I've put these on people and had people, you know, standing there next to me, and all of a sudden fall to the ground because it's so immersive. You don't know that you're not flying. It feels like you're flying, and so you know it can become unstable. So may or may not want goggles, but there it is. It's an accessory, and you can buy it. All right, let's talk about basic operations. How do you fly the thing? Well, I'm just going to go through this quickly. There's plenty of tutorials online. There's tons of YouTube videos on this. I've got a resource here from UAV Coach that'll take you through this and explain this in detail. But I just want to give you the basics. There's two sticks. There's one on the left and one on the right. The one on the left is the thing you use to throttle up and throttle down. And throttling up means you go up, and you throttle down means you come down. Yaw left and yaw right means basically you're turning left, you're circling left, or you're circling right. The stick on the right has a little more control of other things. First of all, you go either forward or backwards. They call it pitch up and pitch back, which is what the drone is doing. It pitches forward and then goes forward, and then it pitches back and goes backwards. Or it can roll left or roll right. Basically, it slides right, and to you, when you're looking through the camera, all you're seeing it do is slide right or slide left. So that's what that does. And so basically most people put their thumbs on the two control sticks, and that's what you use to control the drone. It sounds complicated, it looks complicated, but drones are so much easier to fly now than the way they were. Really, all you have to do is launch the drone. There's even a button on the app that tells you to launch the drone. So it can be sitting on the ground, you punch the launch button, it goes up to eye height, and then you control it from there. And then the same thing, you can bring it back down right in front of you, and then hit the land button, and it'll do an automatic landing and come down. So a lot less things to worry about. You can be in more free space to play with these sticks. But those are the basics of the sticks. As I mentioned, there's a gimbal control. See that little wheel under his index finger there? That little wheel is the thing that controls the gimbal. It either goes up or down. So it goes, you punch it one way, pull the wheel one way, and the camera tilts down. You tilt it the other way, and the camera tilts up. That's what that gimbal control is. They've figured out ergonomically Most all manufacturers are doing this now. They put that little wheel right there by your index finger. Seems to be the most intuitive place for it to be. So another great control that manufacturers are putting on. Then there's lots of controls on the app. This is, I think I mentioned a little bit about it before, that the app is where you control things or you get indicators of what's going on. But the thing that that what's evolved is the ability to control the camera settings. In fact, it's probably more controllable on a DJI drone than it is on your Nikon or even your Sony. It's incredible. They just figured out how to put all those camera settings into the app, and you can change your frame rate. You can change the frames per second. You can change your aperture. You can change from video to photo. You can do time lapses. You can do hyperlapse. It's so many now camera settings that are nicely done there, right for you to see. You control your your over under. You can control your ISO. It's just brilliant what they've done to allow you to get exacting videos and photos.
So I had a specific question about this. So one of the most dramatic moves that I see is ones where people do like a quick zoom out. How would you do that with either the remote or with the app?
I'll cover that. That's actually, okay. Well, it's a droney. It's just a backwards move.
Yeah. I'm assuming, by the way, what I think it is, I think it's a lens move because it's so fast, like it's a lens zoom rather than a physical backing up. The one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, you can do it. Certain apps allow you to zoom. Yes, you can do that. And you have a little finger control, and you can zoom in and zoom out. There's a little finger control. Some of that you can assign that to a wheel. You can assign that actual function to a secondary wheel on your controller.
Is it common to have optical zoom, or is this usually a digital zoom?
It's a digital. Most of the time, it's a digital zoom. No, it's not. It's not optical. You're not moving lenses.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, any other questions there on app control or things that you might want to know about? Okay, let's go on. Let's talk about basics here of what do you need to do when you fly. I got 6 things here. It looks like a lot, but it's things that you probably have your own workflow for when you dive. But there's just a few more things you do with a drone. First of all, and I highly recommend this. I can't say this enough, especially if you're traveling with a drone. Update your firmware and update the no-fly zones in the app before you leave, right before you leave. Because what can happen is you can not do this, not pay attention to it for a month or two, go away, go to your remote location, get ready to fly, and you're locked out because you're on an old piece of firmware or you're in a country where they just updated their no-fly zones and they're going to let you fly. And the manufacturer has put in that stopgap to prevent you from flying. So always, I do this every time I pick up every time I unpack my drone. First thing I do, I power it on inside my where I'm near a good Wi-Fi connection, and I update see if there's an update to the firmware. Usually the app will let you know and update the no-fly zones. That happens just almost every time you turn it on. But that's the first thing. Second thing is the weather and sight that's important. Obviously, you want to know what the precipitation and the wind is. You want to look around where you're going to fly. Are there obstructions? You want to make sure you understand where you're going to take off, where you're going to land. And then if you get in trouble, figure out what your hover zone is. Where you're going to just let go of the sticks, let the thing hover, get your composure, but you want to make sure you know where there's a good hover zone before you take off and make your next move. Well, you always want to do a visual inspection of your aircraft, look for abnormalities, make sure the gimbal clamp is off, the lens cap is off. Then you power up, verify your connection between the transmitter and the aircraft. You make sure your FPV screen is on. Sometimes things aren't on. Sometimes things don't work. Something you got to turn it off, got to recycle it, repower it up. But always verify that connection. Most of the apps will tell you whether you're connected, how well you're connected, whether there's this interference. It'll tell you lots of other things. Like one of the things that you need to pay attention to is the calibration of your drone. Is the compass calibration. Every time you go to a new site or a new location, there's a dance you need to do with your drone to calibrate the compass. And the app usually walks you through exactly what you need to do, how you need to turn the drone on and off and move it up and down in circles so that the compass is completely calibrated to the local area where you are. And then after you power it up, you want to make sure too, you've got your at least a minimum satellite acquisition before you take off. One of the things DJI is doing now is it will let you know that there's not enough satellites for you to take off in GPS mode. Taking off in GPS mode is the one you want to take off in because it's if something goes wrong, the drone isn't going to fly away. It's just going to stay where it is. And then it'll audibly tell you it's set the home point. So it's figured out exactly where you are because it's acquired enough satellites. It's set that home point. That home point is important because if something goes wrong and let's say your battery starts to run low, the drone will fly back to you at wherever your home point is. If you have moved, you're in trouble. Because the drone's going to land where it last took off from, where that home point was. There is a thing called dynamic home point, but it's a kind of an advanced thing. We can talk about that later. And then, most the kind of the pre-flight thing you do is like I said, you take off, you let it hover for 10 to 15 seconds, get it at eye height, look at it. This is normal aircraft stuff. This is what pilots do when they're into the runway. You probably hear every time you fly a jet, flying a jet, the pilot gets to the end of the runway. They power up the jet engines, but they don't power them up the whole way. And they kind of let them run there for 5 seconds or so. And you kind of wonder, what are they doing? Well, they're checking all the pressures. They're checking everything to make sure that everything's okay before they go into full throttle and take off. So same type of thing with the drone. You got to look, listen, and check. So that's kind of your pre-flight things that you do pre-flight. Now, once you're flying, there's Colin's tips for droning. Number 1, avoid the edges of the sky. Edges of the sky are defined by trees, building, poles, people, and puppies. You don't want to run into puppies. So just remember that's an edge of the sky and you stay away from the edges of the sky. So those are things you avoid. 2, don't drink and drone. Alcohol and drones don't mix. It's an aircraft and your motion is impaired and so is your visual. There's lots of things. Just, we just tell people don't drink and drone. Always good to get an extra set of eyes. I was once asked on a panel, what's the most important accessory to your drone? And I said, my wife. And everybody laughed. And I said, no, I said, she's my spotter. I said, I need an extra set of eyes. You get up in the sky and that drone is 300 feet away. You can't see it. You think you can see it. You think you know where it is. But I always have a spotter. I always ask that person, can you see the drone? Do you know where it is? Because I may be focused on something else. I'm focused on getting a great shot, but I've lost where I am in orientation to the sky. You're supposed to keep your eyes on the drone the whole time, but the rules allow you to have a spotter, and that spotter is really, really important. Number 4, avoid the sun. Sounds funny, but people do this a lot. They fly up and they fly into the direction of where the sun is. Let's say it's 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, and you're flying up in that direction, but that's also the direction where the sun is. You can't see it. You can't see your drone. You have no idea where it is when you fly in the sun. So avoid flying directly into the sun. Go at an angle somewhere, left or right. And then the fifth tip I have is practice on land first. Don't try any fancy moves over the water that you first haven't tried on land. And I'm going to go through some of these fancy shots and give you a little tutorial video and talk a little bit about it in a minute. Okay, so resources for you: how to fly a drone, the ultimate beginner guide. There's How to Fly a Drone, a Beginner's Guide to Multi-Rotor Systems and Flight Proficiency. That's UAV Coach. Highly recommend them. They were a great organization. They've been around for a long time, make things very easy, a great place to learn and get resources. A lot of stuff's free. Then the FAA has good stuff on their site called UAS Getting Started. And in the PDF file, you should be able to click through these directly to those websites. Okay. Questions before I talk about operating over the water? Any questions? Okay. Operating over the water and dive operations. All right. Kind of the first thing that you'll notice when you're flying over the water is that it's bright. And if you're shooting video, you're going to need some filters, either a neutral density filter or a polarized filter. And the reason is, especially if you're shooting video, is that your shutter speed matters when you're shooting video. So the kind of the rule of thumb that everybody has, and it's been around ever since the beginning of film, which is that your shutter speed should be double the frame rate. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, you want your shutter speed to be at 1/50th. You're shooting at 30 frames per second, you want at 1/60th, or 60 at 1/20th of a second is what you want to have your shutter speed at. Well, to get that low, you're going to have to, on a bright day, you're really going to have to put a piece of sunshade on there. And that's what this little gold filter is you see on the left there over the camera lens. That's a neutral density filter that really brings down the light that going into the camera. So you got to get a set of filters, especially if you're going to be flying over the water, because you will blow out your video. In other words, blowing out, you know what that means? You'll just get a lot of white and bright objects, and they won't have good definition. All right, tips for flying from a boat. Okay, it sounds easy, but it's really difficult because there's lots of things that can go wrong. And like I said, I recommend whatever you do, fly. Try taking off and landing from very small spaces before you go out on a boat. First thing you want to do is get permission. What's important is to calibrate your compass and your IMU, which is your inertial movement unit. You'll see that in the app before you leave the dock. Boats and you're moving on a boat, and you're rocking back and forth will upset the compass and the IMU on your drone. Now, drones have gotten better over the years. The latest ones do pretty good on boats. You don't have to be worried as much as you do, but always, even if you're at the same location for days, I always calibrate the compass and the IMU before I leave the dock, then take it onto the boat. Taking off and landing from a moving boat is really difficult, and it's not something I recommend you do unless you become very experienced. The reason is those propellers are spinning really, really fast. No matter how well you've trained somebody to catch your drone, they can let go and it can go flying off into the water and drones sink. The boat needs to be stable. It needs to be anchored, needs to be in a stable location and not rocking around a lot. The other thing is you got to find a clear area on the boat to launch and land. You got to communicate with your crew. You got to have a spotter on the crew. You need to pay a close attention to the wind direction and turbulence. I always tell people, you really need to take off flying into the wind first. So go ahead of you. Typically the boat is pointing that way anyway. It's typically pointing out into the wind. It may not be, the current may be, going a different direction. So your boat may not be in that direction. You got to pay attention to that. But typically it's pointing into the wind anyway. So you want to fly ahead of yourself. You always want to have a fail-safe for return to home. You want to know what you would do if you got into trouble. Sit. You're rocking around on that boat, standing up. You'd be surprised how many times you can bump a throttle or bump your stick and send the drone off into a direction you don't want to go. When you're sitting down, you aren't going to have as much problems. I always tell people to keep their geofencing turned on. Geofencing is the thing inside the drone that tells it when it's about to approach a no-fly zone. So for example, when you're flying in Bonaire, the runway geofence runs right straight out, almost out to Little Bonaire. Is it Little Bonaire? Is that the name of the small island off there? What's that?
Klein Bonaire.
Yeah, yes, right. It runs out just shy of it, just to the left of it. So you got to pay attention to that. So you don't want to fly into a geofenced area. So you need to have it turned on. Stay above the water, and then this is the biggest thing: have enough battery and extra reserve to return safely. Most people, when they're practicing on land, they'll run their battery down to 25%. And for most places in an open field, that's fine. You got enough energy to come down, and even came down, you'll be able to walk forward and get your drone. You can't walk forward to get your drone. So you gotta, on a boat, so you gotta have enough battery in reserve to return safely. And then the other thing is stay calm, don't panic. Most people make their mistakes because they panic. Something went wrong, or they got a warning. They need to come back. I need to come back real quick, and then they start making jerky moves, and then it starts going down from there. Okay, filming dive operations. Same thing. Get permission from your dive operator. Calibrate your drone on land. Bring an extra battery. You may want to fly more than once. Make sure you've got a hood or a screen shade, because you're flying typically not during golden hour. You're flying typically when the sun is high. There's nothing wrong with that. But the sun is shining down onto the screen, and unless your screen is super bright, you aren't going to see it well. So highly recommend a screen. Some kind of screen shade. Some people use hoods. I used to, but a hood would fit over the entire screen. You have your face all the way down in it. That's the problem I have with hoods, is your face is all the way down into it, and you can't see your drone. Fly when you're dry. You don't want to get out of the water. I see people scurry out of the water, and then they're wet. Then they grab their drone. They're wet. The drone gets wet. Water gets on the motor. And then they, I gotta film this, they get out and they film it. So my rule of thumb is, for myself, it's just me, I skip the dive. If I'm gonna fly, I've skipped that dive. I don't dive that dive. I just fly the drone. It's one or the other. And I make sure it's usually first. So rather than get wet and do a dive and then get out and fly the drone, I'll skip the first dive, fly the drone, and then go in the second dive. Don't fly directly over divers on the surface. You don't want to fly over anybody directly. First of all, it's illegal. Second of all, you want to keep the drone, well away from divers, because it can come crashing down. Always keep your drone within the line of sight. Beware of birds and flying fish. Hasn't happened to me yet, but I've heard the horror stories of people flying low and the flying fish comes out of the water or the bird comes in. There are bird strikes on drones. And then land with a good amount of battery. Like just same thing with the other thing with boats. Make sure you've got 25 to 30% of battery left. So you don't want to expend everything. Don't expend everything. You bring us. That's why I bring an extra battery. You can always land, swap out batteries, it can go up again. You know, the power is cheap. Batteries are cheap. Drones are expensive. Questions about that?
Yeah, so some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen with drones was where the boat's going at full speed and the drone is ahead of it looking back at the boat. Does that take a very capable drone to be able to keep up that kind of rate of speed?
No, most drones will fly at that speed. You know, you're probably talking about 10 or 15 knots.
Right.
They'll do that in sport mode,
Right.
where you've taken the brakes off, and you're allowing it to do that.
Right.
That takes some good coordination between you and your captain and the boat, and you've typically the boat is at rest. You take off. And then, you're giving direction to everybody and telling them what to do. And you're telling the pilot or the captain, where to go and how fast to go. Yeah, I mean, that's doable, but you need a lot of coordination.
Okay. I think a lot of drones, don't they have a mode where you can just get it to maintain a certain position relative to where the controller is, or where you are, where the app is? Yes,
you can do that. You can do that. It's called follow me mode, and you're setting a distance. It is sort of an advanced move. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's doable. Okay. But I'd work up to it. I wouldn't do it right away. Sure. It's something I've done and tried. I just don't have much stomach for it. It is kind of puckering. So even for you, it's a pretty advanced move. Yeah, yes. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to get a feel for what the level of difficulty was. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
I have maybe one, sort of related question or maybe cautionary tale that I didn't hear mentioned. So I've flown my drone alongside moving boats in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And I did make one mistake that maybe I caution people not to make a mistake, the same mistake, is that there's a default setting that says the drone won't go a certain distance from the launch point. I think it's 200 yards or something like that. So essentially the drone stopped and the boat kept going.
Yeah,
and I had to make the driver turn around so I could recover the drone, but I didn't realize that was on by default. So I didn't crash anything, but it took me a few minutes to realize what was going on.
Yeah, yeah, interesting.
So I think this gets back to maybe Colin. I'm not sure when you're going to talk about. You said you'd talk later about the dynamic home point, but that seems like where that might really come into play, right? With a situation like Brad's talking about.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, the dynamic home point. If you're on the boat, yes, the home point is changing constantly with where you are. You can do that. Yep. Okay. And the other thing is there's a max distance, and you can set that. That's something you can set in the app also. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
All right. I'm going to talk about the 5 cinematic moves. There's tons of moves. I put these top 5. This should say the top easy 5 cinematic moves is really what it should say. And I've got an example of this, but I'll explain them first, and then I'll show you a video, and hopefully be able to talk over the video and just talk about what you can do. This is really, first of all, the thing about cinematic moves is that they're not fast. Most cinematic moves are slow. And that's why the first one is called Easy Forward, which is that you're just flying the drone slow enough so that people get the context of what you're doing. Too many fast moves and people can lose interest, or they can't follow the story, or they can't follow what you're doing. Lots of ways to do this. Some of them you can control in the app. There's either SYN mode or app tripod mode. There's the EXP, which is the way you control the sticks. It's called EXP. They're buried way down into the menu system of most of the apps, but you can set it, and you can set it to low so that in other words, when you press, let's say, go forward, pressing all the way forward doesn't go fast. It goes slow because you've set your EXP to low. That's what that is. The other thing about Easy Forward is that you can think you're going forward, but at the time you're going forward, the wind may be coming from your port or from your starboard, and it's actually blowing the drone off course. So you kind of have to compensate for that. Little tricky to do that. It's really just about getting your yaw properly set so that you're facing the right direction. Easy side skid. You can match the speed of the boat. You're just following the boat. Your drone is sitting out perpendicular to the boat, and the boat's going along, and you can just match the speed of it as it goes along. You can also use auto follow on your subject. The drone will do it automatically. A droney is where you go backwards and you go up, so it keeps the subject in the center of frame. It's kind of a it's just a fun kind of. It's like a selfie. That's called It basically is a selfie, but they're called dronies, where you get a group of people in a shot and you go backwards and then you see where everybody is. You're close up at first, and then you go backwards and you can see the context, you can see the boat, or you can see the horizon. I'll show you that. The only thing you need to know about that is it's a fairly easy move. You just got to make sure you don't have any obstacles behind you. Let's see. Point up, point down, go up. This is another simple move. You face the camera straight down, you push the left stick, and you go up. And that just basically, you're showing altitude, height, and again, showing context. The alternative to this is that you add a little yaw and you create a spiral as you go up. Again, simple move, nothing complex, but it does create an interesting move for people who are watching your videos who are completely know nothing about cameras or drones. The other one is a little more complex, and this one's been made easier with all the software that the drones have now. It's just fantastic. It's called Circle a Point of Interest. And basically it's an active track that sets the drone in an automated fashion to circle an object. So you point it onto an object, let's say a boat or an island, or your dive resort, and you set that to stay in the center of your frame, and the drone will circle it, and it goes around it. But as it goes around it, the object always stays in the center, and you can do it as fast or as slow as you want. Again, it's something that is fun to do. People go wild with it. It is fun. It's cool. It's one of the master shots that people took a long time for most people to master, because it required a lot of stick movements, and those stick movements had to be precise. With active track and spotlight, you don't need to do that anymore. You just set the software. You just set your object. You highlight your object in your app, and you punch the button, and the drone does it automatically. Kind of a nice thing to have now. There's more of these moves. There's more that are available in the apps, but these were the top 5 that just were easy and interesting enough. So I did do a video on that. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I'm going to show the video. Let me see if I've got it queued up here. How about this? Give me 1 second. And share screen. There we go. Okay, there's no sound for this, but it's on Vimeo also. Hopefully you see. Does everybody see this top 5 cinematic drone
Yes.
moves? Okay. All right, I'm going to go through this. These were the same 5 that I just explained. These are the examples. Okay, easy forward. This is the first example. Easy forward. I've got the camera pointing down and I'm just slowly moving forward. I'm bringing the subject through the frame. The second one is easy forward. Now what I'm doing is the same thing, but at the same time I'm turning the gimbal up. So the camera was facing down, but now as I'm pushing forward, the camera is slowly panning up, and that brings forward the horizon and brings the subject into view. Okay, easy side skid. You can see this is just a simple move. You're just taking the drone and go sideways. But the cool thing about it is that you're seeing the stuff in the foreground. I'm just going faster than I can explain. The subject in the foreground is moving, and the subject in the background is still. So you have this sense of particular motion. Okay, this is the droney. The droney is basically a selfie where you go back. Now in this one, what I did was I put a twist on it. Instead of going straight back, I turned the drone to the left and around a little bit to try to make it a little more interesting. So you can see here, we're on the front of the boat. There we are, everybody waves. And now instead of going straight in front of the boat, I've turned the drone, kept the subject in the middle, and then the horizon shows. Okay, this is another one, the simple one that I explained about doing a spiral. Basically, you're pointing down and you're circling the object. Very simple move. You're just yawing. All you do is a yaw. You either go left or right, and you're going up at the same time. So you're yawing left or right, and you're elevating it. Okay, now this is the circle. I want to stop this for a second because there's 2 of these. This is the circle, the point of interest. The point of interest here is these apartments or units that are in. This is, by the way, this is Voli Voli in Fiji, where I just came back. And the point of interest is those. You see the beach area, and then you go right above it, you see those rooms that are there. Those are the center of the frame. So this first one just circles it that way. In the next one, it's the same move, but in post-production, what I've done is zoom in. So now you have 2 movements of the camera, which is the same shot because I shot it in 4K and produced in 1080. I now can zoom in because I've got double the size of the image, and I can zoom in at the same time. Okay, so there you go. There's some cinematic moves.
So I had a question about the droney one in the middle.
Yeah.
Seemed like that was very fast. Did that involve some digital zoom, or did you just fly the drone very rapidly?
Yeah, no, you just fly it real rapidly. You're pushing up, and you're trying to do 3 things at once. But basically, you're going backwards.
Yeah.
And you're going up.
Yeah.
Okay, at the same time, and you're keeping but you have to do it at an angle that keeps the subject sort of in the center of the frame.
Yeah.
So you have to have pressure on the up and the back to be about equal.
So you were using some relatively heavy stick motion to get that high speed?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's a fast push forward.
Mhm.
Yep. A fast push
thanks.
backwards. Yep. It is.
Do you think that some of the automated features like subject tracking will make that easier? Have you tried that, or because I haven't myself? I'm just curious.
Yeah, you can do this with subject tracking, but I'd say I don't know. I have to think about this for a second, whether that's in the master shots. I think in DJI master shots on some of the apps, it is available. It is one of the moves that is automated. But if it's not automated, you can just do that. You can put subject tracking on, and that'll keep that boat in the center of the frame. I don't think I had it on. In fact, I know I didn't. I didn't have it on. I was just trying to get to.
That looks like it would take a lot of hours to be able to do that without any automation.
This?
Yeah, yeah. In other words, all the yaw and the lateral motion and
Yeah.
the throttle and the camera gimbal, you have
Yeah.
all those have to be coordinated for that.
They all have to be
not
coordinated.
work.
Yeah. But the simple one, the simple drone, I didn't have an example here to show you, is what would happen is I would just go straight back and I'd keep going back and up at the same time instead
Okay.
of making that turn.
Okay,
And that's not that hard.
okay. Thanks.
That's something you can again, you can practice that on land.
Yeah.
Again,
Okay.
you're going up and backwards at the same time, both at the same rate. And you find you probably 2 or 3 times you'll get it.
Okay.
Right. Okay, let me go back to share screen. Share. Let me know when I'm back in full screen on the presentation.
We can
You're
see you.
back.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I think we're almost done here. Last section, packing for travel. Luggage. You can take a drone on a plane, either in your carry-on or as a piece of checked luggage, depending on its size. But make sure your drone's turned off and any switches are protected. Consider getting a dedicated drone carrying case to protect your drone. Now that's just the drone itself. The batteries are a different story. Batteries require some calculation, but mostly what you need to know is, and I've never had anybody check this, you do want it on your carry-on bag. You do not want to put in, and most airlines have a restriction for your LiPo batteries. They can't be in the cargo hull. They need to be on your carry-on. So you're separating your drone and your battery. There's a 100-watt-hour limit, and there's a calculator for that. You can look these up. There's a couple of websites that can tell you what that is. Some of the airlines have specific requirements, but basically what you need to know is separate your batteries and your drone. Recommendation is you do not charge up your batteries before you leave on your trip. Your batteries should be at half power when you're traveling. The battery is LiPo batteries are unstable. They will catch fire if there's a hole in them, or they get punctured, or they explode. You probably remember this, that, a few years ago, it was probably more than 10 years ago, where there were those fires on board for people carrying their drones, and the fires in the cargo hull and also in the carry-on areas. Those were from LiPo batteries that had people had charged up, had some kind of hole, and then they caught fire. They make bags specifically for the LiPo batteries, but you don't need it if you have a smart battery. You really only need to do, what you really only need to know is that you don't go with a charged battery. You go with 50 or 30%, and then when you get to your location, then you charge it up.
What's special about the bags you're talking about that you put the batteries in?
It's a LiPo battery bag. It's just a fireproof bag.
Wow. Okay.
Don't see those that much anymore. You don't really need them, but
These are with heavy insulation or something, or what?
it's a special fireproof fabric.
Okay.
And a Velcro closure, and
Okay.
you put them in there, but again, they need to be in your carry-on.
Yeah.
That's what
Okay.
people were doing. The older batteries were, they're still out there. The LiPo batteries are, if they're not protected, most drones have plastic around them now, and there's plenty of information on battery maintenance out there, and you can find YouTube videos specifically on this, how to care for your drone battery, or you could just Google that, say just with those terms, how to care for your drone batteries. You got to look for things if they get puffy, they start expanding outside their case size, or you can feel it get squishy. It's probably time for a new battery. They're expensive, but it's kind of the thing just part of the consumable part of droning.
Okay.
Okay, customs, research your country's drone law. You got to know what to do. Like, for example, when I went to Fiji, I looked up the drone law, and it required pre-registration. So you register your drone with the civil aviation. You tell them you're just going to use it for recreational reuse. You tell them where it's going to be. Well, it's supposed to be a simple process where you fill the form out and then you email it in. And then I didn't get a response. I emailed them again. I didn't get a response. So I finally called them, and I called them up, and then the guy said, "Yeah, where'd you send it? Okay, what email did you send it to?" Okay. And no other word, but all of a sudden shows up in my email as an approval. So, it may fall to the person who is the lowest of the bureaucrats who end up doing that approval. Just be aware that's the case. Philippines don't need to worry about it. You pretty much fly wherever you want to. They pretty much don't care much. But your resort may care. Certain resorts do care. They don't want you to fly over top of people inside the resort, because some of them have outside bathrooms. So they say, well, okay, you can fly in the morning. But anyway, determine where you're required to register your drone and within the country's national or civil aviation, and then you got to follow the country's requirements for drone licensing and certification. Some of them are pretty restrictive, so and some are, like I said, freer. That's it. How are we doing on time?
You're doing fine.
Okay. I thought what I would do is, well, there's my, just give you, I'm going to go back and show you a few of the resources, but this is my contact information. This will be on it will be on the PDF. Feel free to contact me if you have a question, or you can follow me on Instagram. I've got my website has the connections to Instagram and Facebook.
Do you do training, or do you recommend training programs?
The only training program, I don't do training. No, I would recommend UAV Coach.
Is that one of the ones you had on your presentation earlier?
Yep, it is.
Okay.
It is. And what I'm going to do is, give me 1 second. I'm going to open that. Give me a second. I'm going to open a website. Let's first look at country laws.
Yeah, like Bonaire I think might be an interesting case study. I heard that they used to be more open and now they're more restrictive, and so.
Well, let's look.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do right now. So let me share my screen. Share screen. There we go. Okay. Master list. Let's find. There's the states.
Yeah.
Bonaire is not listed as Bonaire. It's
Ooh.
listed as
Netherland Antilles or something, or?
Yeah, let's see here. I'm looking. Hold on.
Wow.
No, there's what's the name of it now?
Oh.
There is a name for what they call those.
I saw Saint Martin, and I think that's part of the same administrative thing, so that might be similar.
Saint Martin, yeah, Saint Martin. No, that's the French. Saint Kitts, Saint Lucia. Hold on, we'll find it.
Oh, there's Curacao.
Curacao. Okay, well, that'll work.
Yeah.
Yep, that's part of them. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, drone laws in Curacao. There we go. If you're traveling to Curacao, you want to bring a drone, CCAA lists these considerations. Drones must be registered prior to bringing into the country. Failure to do so result in the drone being seized. Yeah. One of the things I didn't tell you when I went to Fiji, and I'd heard this from somebody else, that when I pre-registered, I printed out my pre-registration. I printed 2 copies just because I always do that. I'm just one of those people who just, make sure that there's redundancy. And I got to the airport and was going through customs, went through customs, and then was going through final exit, and they screen your luggage and they put it through a scanner. And I went through the scanner, and the 2 women said, "Do you have a drone?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Did you get permission?" I said, "Yes." "Can we see it?" "Yes." "Okay." I said, "Yes." And here's the email where I got the approval. "We need a copy of it." Okay. No indication that they would need a copy of it, except that the person had tipped me off and said, "Hey, just so you know, when I went through, they checked it and they did catch me with a drone, and they did ask me if it was registered." So I gave them a copy, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just, maybe that'll happen to me. Because I thought maybe it's a random screening, but nope, they screen everything. So they did keep a copy of it. Anyway, there you go. There's general rules for flying. Do not fly over congested areas. Keep your drone within sight. 400 feet. See how it is? It's almost the same. A lot of countries. Do not fly within 50 meters of persons, vehicles. Fly overhead of groups or any height. That's the same as the US. Do not fly near the Hotel International Airport or the wharf. Do not fly in the rainy season, stormy season. Do not fly in conditions of low visibility. Do not fly in your restricted areas, including government or military facilities. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to DJI no-fly zone right there. And here's the GeoSafe map. This is the map that is used inside of your drone. And basically you search, let's do Bonaire International, Bonaire, Georgia, Bonaire, Caribbean, Netherlands, Antilles. You seeing this?
Yep. Yeah.
All right. So now as we go in, you'll see the airport. And you should see the bow tie. There's the bow tie right there.
Okay. Yep.
And see what I mean? How it's so close it is? And see how this area in the blue is restricted. And then the bow tie here is the flight takeoff and landing pattern. And you can see that you've only got a certain area out here where you can fly out at that edge of Klein Bonaire.
I understand the bow tie, but why did they restrict the blue part?
Well, in general, that is the way most airports work.
Okay.
They have a circle around them.
Okay.
The difference, though, is that the circle, depending upon the airport and the classification of the airport, the closer you are, the closer to the ground you need to be. The further out, the further out it could. So it could be. I don't know for sure. I'd have to see exactly it there. We have to go to a real detailed flight map. Yeah. But typically it's like a upside down, we call it the upside down birthday cake. Right. So closer in, you 50 feet, you go out to, halfway and you can go to 200 feet. You go out towards the edge, you can go to 300 feet. And then anything beyond that, you can go to 400 feet. And where would you find that level of detail? For Bonaire? Yeah. I don't know.
What about for the US?
In the US, sometimes it's in, let's do, oh, what's the map? Oh, man. There is a place where you can go to find out that information.
Mm,
Um, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it right at the moment.
okay,
Um, if you're doing commercial work, you do need to do that. So you need to
Yeah.
tell them you're going to be operating within that zone,
right,
and you get a special permission
right,
for it
okay.
through the tower or through the FAA. It is online now.
Mhm.
I can look it up and get back to you.
Okay, sounds good.
But there is that. Yes.
Okay.
You can see here's our Bay Area. You can see we've got, restrictions all over the place. All right. What else was, give me a second. There was one other thing I think I was going to look at. No, I think that was it. Yeah, I think those were the two things I wanted to at least do
Okay.
live, is kind of give you an idea of what you do. But those are I use that no fly zone all the time to make sure that before I go on a trip, I know what the restriction is, and I know where I can and where I can't fly.
One other question I had was, I've had a hard time seeing like displays in full sunlight. I guess how effective are the shades that you talked about, or is that a problem you've had as well?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. One of the first things is, I didn't put it on the list there, but it's one of the first things you do is you turn up the brightness on your screen all the way to max.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the dedicated controllers have a higher nit, so you get a much brighter screen.
Okay. Do you
I
use a
had one of
dedicated
those for-
controller
I
in your
had one
case
for-
rather than a cell phone?
What's that?
You use a dedicated controller rather than a cell phone in your case?
I don't now, but there is one coming for my drone. For the drone I fly the Air 2S, and it didn't have it. Didn't have a dedicated controller, but it looks like they're going to make that controller available
Yeah.
for it. So I'm definitely
Yeah.
moving that way. It's
Okay.
it's so much easier. So much easier. And it is brighter. And I still use I would still use a shade
Yeah.
personally.
Okay. Thanks.
Do you, in that note, I mean, I've had my iPad screen overheat and go blank.
Yeah.
In the sun. So I couldn't see anything. I just had to watch the drone, but that wasn't really why I chimed in. I'm kind of curious. So, I have a Phantom 4 Pro and a Mini, Mini 2, the second generation Mini one.
Yeah.
And my thoughts now are, I'm never traveling with that Phantom 4 Pro boat anchor again. I like the Mini size. It's so small. It's fantastic. Yeah. But I worry about wind.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious if you had experience with looks like maybe you've moved from a Phantom 3 or 4 to a Mavic to a smaller drone. Do you see issues with wind on the shore?
Yep. No, and that was my choice. My choice was because I was finding that I was really traveling more with my drone than I was using it locally. And so I wanted a smaller drone, but I did want to be able to use it over the water. And so that's why I chose the Air 2S. Just because it's, one above. The Mini, you could fly it, but, I just felt like most every time I'm out on a boat, there is wind. And so, why risk it?
Wait, so can you say more? So you're implying that like the small drones are easier to travel with, big drones are better for speed and wind, but
Yep.
then you kind of picked something that was in between, so it'd be easy to
Correct.
travel with, but still.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep, yep, yep. Portability, weight in the luggage, size of the size of what all the batteries and everything that has to go with it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, a Mavic is fine. There's nothing wrong with a Mavic. You can travel with a Mavic. It's great to travel with. I did for years, but I just wanted to, I didn't want to continue to carry. And the camera, it turned out that at the time I made the switch, the camera was better on the Air 2S than it was on the Mavic that I had. So the trade-off was a better camera and a smaller drone. And it's working fine in the air. I don't have any problems.
How much does it weigh?
Oh, it's above 240, 350, or maybe close to 400 grams.
Okay.
Do you see, have you encountered any issues where a under 249 gram drone would have been of benefit? I think in Canada, I think there's some benefits, but I don't know about internationally.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, internationally too, but
I mean, besides Canada, that is.
I don't, I can only tell you my experience. And yes, probably you could look this up online. I'm sure somebody's gone through, lots more traveling than I have. And what they've experienced, but my experience was just the one, I'd say from going to the Fiji, even if I had a smaller drone, they wouldn't, I don't want to get into an argument with somebody about the weight of the drone, even though the law says under 250 grams. I'm now at an airport entering into a foreign country. Do I want to have that conversation? No, I'd rather register. Well, if I'm going to register, then I'd just take a bigger drone because I got to register it anyway. Does that make sense? That's just me.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just know it's an interesting world now with the some advantages to under 250 and sometimes not, but it all seems like maybe in the US it doesn't matter much anyway. So it's
well, in the US it matters. I mean, it's outside the US. It's outside the US that it matters, because inside the US under 250 you're golden. Just take off and do whatever you want. You don't have to register it. You don't have to do you don't have to have drone ID, even though it'll come with a drone ID, whether you want it or not. It'll be there. The camera's great on the new Mini 3 Pro. Then depends on what you're doing. There's the advantage now is, I hate to say it, but it's a TikTok world. Everything is this way now, right? We view the world through our phones. Everything's this way. Well,
never.
Shoot, that puts a whole new twist on the way you're filming and everything. Well, the new Mini 3, the gimbal turns to an upright position. I'm like, yeah, well, there it goes. That's made me feel old.
How much wind can the mini drones take, and how much can the Air 2S take, or the Mavic?
Wow, you'd have to look that up. I'm not an expert on that, but just to give you my swag.
Yeah.
The Air 2S does still pretty good, around 15 knots.
Mhm.
20 knots, it'd struggle.
Okay.
A Mavic Pro
Mhm.
would do, probably could go up to 20. It depends on the gusts.
Yeah.
It's really just not about the steady part of the, most drones can handle a steady wind. It's the gust.
Yeah. Okay. What about the little ones?
Oh, they'd be tossed at 15.
Okay.
You'd be struggling. You're just hearing a lot of buzzing. You're gonna burn through a lot of battery.
Okay. Thanks.
I can see my Mini struggling a bit on certain in wind, but the gimbal seems to take care of them.
Yeah.
I've encountered so far, so it's not showing
Yeah.
up in the shots. But I can compare to my larger. I had a Mavic 2, which I crashed, but I've seen
Good.
those were dead stable in the same wind.
Yeah.
It's still by
Yeah.
Mini again though. It's still that good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've considered getting a Mini. I mean, I honestly have, when it came out with the camera spec, 48 megapixels, like, it is a digital zoom, but still, still seems good.
Always in my backpack. That's what I like.
Yeah, yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
I have one question. And my sort of knowledge of drones is way out of date, but back, in the early days, the batteries, you didn't get a lot of flying time on a battery. Is that still true, or can they now?
No, you get really good length. This with a Mini 3, you probably get 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
I get 20, just under 30 minutes on my Air 2S. I don't know, Brad, what do you get?
Well, my Mini 2, I can probably get 25 minutes out of it most. I don't usually take it out that far, but the Mini 3 has a battery that will take it over 249 grams, so it exceeds that limit, or 250 grams. But then then you get like 40 minutes or something out of it. So
Wow.
a bit longer. So yeah, if you don't care about the weight limit, you can put the bigger battery on.
A lot of flying time.
Yeah,
It is a lot of flying time. And I don't know, my personal experience is I'm tired after 20, 25 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Really, because you're concentrating a lot. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure unless I was doing commercial work where I had to be up in the air and I had to get a certain shot. And I did that. No more. Now it's just for fun. So.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Are there any more questions for Colin? All right. Well, Colin, thank you. It was tremendous.
Thank you.
Really awesome. Yeah.
Yes, thanks very much. Great topic.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you let me talk about it, and it's fun for me.
It was great. Tremendous amount of information. And you mentioned PDF and so forth. So if you have some materials, we can certainly post them and make them available to people. I'm sure they appreciate that. That would be great, because it was a tremendous amount of information. So thanks again. Appreciate it.